The room went silent the moment Vivian Cross closed her folder. Not the respectful kind of silence. The fearful kind. 22 executives sat frozen around the polished mahogany table, eyes fixed straight ahead, shoulders stiff, breath shallow. No one dared reach for their water glass. No one blinked too long. They had learned painfully that silence was safer than speaking when Vivian Cross looked like that. She stood at the head of the table, immaculately dressed in a charcoal gray suit that cost more than most of their monthly salaries. Her heels were sharp, her posture sharper. Not a single strand of her dark hair was out of place. Vivian didn't raise her voice. She never needed to. "Explain to me," she said calmly, "why a company valued at 9 figures missed a deadline that was clearly outlined, bolded, and confirmed 3 separate times." No one answered. She tilted her head slightly, her gaze landing on a man near the far end of the table, mid-40s, sweating through his collar. "You," she said, "since you signed off on the report." The man cleared his throat. There were unforeseen complications. Vivian smiled. It was not a kind smile. "Unforeseen," she repeated softly. Interesting word choice. "Especially since my assistant flagged those complications 2 weeks ago." The man swallowed. "We believed we could still." "Belief," Vivian cut in, "is what people cling to when they lack competence." The air seemed to thin. She walked slowly around the table, heels clicking once, twice. Each step deliberate. "I don't pay you to believe," she continued. "I pay you to deliver. And when you fail, you don't waste my time with excuses." She stopped behind his chair. "Pack your things," she said quietly. "HR will walk you out." A collective flinch rippled through the room. The man's face drained of color. "Ms. Cross, please." She leaned forward, her voice a whisper meant only for him, yet somehow everyone heard it. "I don't repeat myself." He stood on shaking legs and left without another word. Vivian returned to her seat, smoothed her sleeve, and glanced at her watch. "Meeting adjourned," she said. "Try not to disappoint me next time." One by one, the executives filed out, relief and dread tangled in their expressions. Vivian Cross remained seated, alone. The glass walls of the boardroom reflected her image back at her, powerful, untouchable, perfectly composed, and utterly unmoved. The underground parking garage was cool and dim, the echo of footsteps bouncing off concrete pillars. A black luxury sedan waited near the elevator, engine already running. Behind the wheel sat Daniel Hale. He watched her approach in the rearview mirror. Vivian Cross always walked like the world parted for her, back straight, chin lifted, eyes forward. Most people shrank in her presence. Daniel had seen it countless times, security guards stiffening, assistants scrambling, executives tripping over their words. He didn't. He opened the door for her calmly, as he always did. "Good evening, Miss Cross." She slid into the back seat without acknowledging him. "Home," she said. Daniel nodded and pulled out smoothly, merging into traffic. The city glowed around them, neon signs, wet pavement reflecting streetlights, horns blaring in the distance. Inside the car, silence wrapped around them like thick velvet. Vivian stared out the window, arms crossed. After a few minutes, she spoke. "Did you hear anything from the meeting?" Daniel's eyes stayed on the road. "No, ma'am." A pause. "You were waiting outside." "Yes." "And you heard nothing?" "No, ma'am." She glanced at him, suspicion flickering in her eyes. Most drivers pretended not to hear. Daniel didn't pretend. He simply didn't listen. That annoyed her and unsettled her. She said, turning back to the window. Rain began to fall, light at first, then heavier, streaking down the glass. They drove in silence again, the kind that pressed on the ears. Finally, Daniel spoke. "You fired him," he said. Vivian's head snapped toward the partition. "Excuse me." Daniel didn't look back. "The man from the meeting. You fired him." Her eyes narrowed. And he was scared long before you spoke." Something in his tone made her sit straighter. "Careful," she warned. "You're not paid to analyze my decisions." "No," Daniel agreed calmly. "I'm paid to drive." Silence slammed down between them. Vivian's fingers curled slowly against her palm. No one spoke to her like that. No one. "And yet," Daniel added gently, "fear doesn't improve performance. It only teaches people how to hide mistakes." Her breath hitched, barely noticeable, but real. "Are you criticizing me?" she asked coldly. Daniel finally met her gaze in the mirror. No, he said. I'm observing. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The rain intensified, drumming against the roof of the car. Vivian looked away first. You're unusually bold tonight, she said. I'm usually quiet, Daniel replied. People mistake that for obedience. She let out a short, humorless laugh. Don't confuse your position, she said. You're replaceable. Daniel nodded once. So is everyone. That did it. Pull over, Vivian snapped. The car slowed to a stop beneath a streetlight, rain pouring down around them. Daniel turned slightly in his seat. Is there a problem, ma'am? She leaned forward, her voice low and sharp. You forget who you work for. No, Daniel said quietly. I remember exactly. Something dangerous passed between them, then not anger, not attraction. Recognition. Vivian leaned back, suddenly exhausted. Drive, she said. Daniel pulled back into traffic without another word. But something had shifted. Neither of them knew it yet, but the collision had already begun. As the car disappeared into the rain-soaked city, Vivian Cross felt something unfamiliar tighten in her chest. Not anger, not control, something else. And for the first time in years, she didn't know how to name it. The rain didn't stop. By the time they reached Vivian's estate, it had become a steady downpour, blurring the iron gates and soaking the long private drive that curved toward the house like a warning rather than a welcome. Daniel pulled the car to a smooth stop beneath the portico. He stepped out first, rain immediately darkening his jacket, and opened the back door. Careful, he said. The steps are slick. Vivian hesitated not because of the rain, but because of the word careful. No one ever told her to be careful. She stepped out anyway, heels landing firmly on the stone, posture rigid, refusing help. Daniel didn't insist. He simply walked beside her, close enough to block the rain, far enough to respect her space. Inside, the house was silent. Too silent. The kind of silence that made footsteps echo and thoughts grow louder. Daniel removed his coat near the entrance. I'll have the car ready at 6 tomorrow, he said. Vivian nodded absently, slipping off her heels. She stopped mid-motion. Wait. Daniel turned. She didn't look at him. Her eyes were fixed on the staircase. The storm, she said. It's supposed to worsen overnight. Yes, ma'am. She swallowed. The staff left early. Another pause. You can stay. Daniel blinked once. In the guest house, she added quickly. Until morning. He studied her not rudely, not intensely, just enough to register something off. You don't like being alone, he said. The words hung between them. Vivian's jaw tightened. That wasn't a question. No, Daniel agreed. It wasn't. He nodded once. Thank you. I'll stay. She exhaled, sharper than she meant to. Good. Hours later, Vivian sat alone in her kitchen, a glass of wine untouched beside her. She rarely drank. Tonight, she needed something to keep her hands from shaking. She hated that. The house creaked softly as the storm pressed against it, wind rattling the tall windows like restless fingers. Every sound felt amplified. Too present. She glanced at the clock. 1:17 a.m. She should sleep. She didn't. A sudden clap of thunder made her flinch. Her fingers tightened around the glass. She stood abruptly and paced, the marble floor cold beneath her bare feet. Get a grip, she muttered. Another thunderclap. She stopped. Without allowing herself to overthink it, she walked toward the guest wing. She knocked once, then twice. The door opened almost immediately. Daniel stood there in a simple shirt, sleeves rolled up, calm as ever. Yes. Vivian crossed her arms. The storm is loud. He waited. I can hear it from my room, she continued stiffly. It's distracting. Daniel stepped aside. Would you like tea? She frowned. What? Tea, he repeated. It helps some people. She hesitated, then nodded. Fine. They sat at opposite ends of the kitchen island, steam curling from their mugs. Vivian wrapped her hands around the cup, letting the warmth seep in despite herself. You don't sleep much, Daniel said. She stiffened. You don't know that. I hear your footsteps, he replied gently. Most nights. Her gaze snapped up. You listen to me? I notice, he corrected. She took a sharp sip of tea. Don't what? Notice me. Daniel held her gaze, unbothered. That's difficult. Silence fell again. Vivian stared at the surface of her tea, watching the steam rise and vanish. People think I enjoy being feared, she said suddenly. Daniel didn't interrupt. They think I wake up every morning eager to ruin someone's career, she continued. That I enjoy the power. Her voice wavered just slightly. And do you? He asked. She looked up at him then, truly looked. No, she said. I enjoy control. Why? The question was simple. The answer wasn't. Because control means nothing can be taken from me, she said quietly. Daniel leaned back, folding his arms. Someone took something once, he said. It wasn't a question. Vivian's throat tightened. Yes. Thunder rolled again, closer this time. She exhaled slowly. My father, she said. He built everything. And one day he vanished. Daniel's brow furrowed. Vanished. Left, she corrected. Without a word. Without a goodbye. Took everything that mattered and disappeared. She laughed bitterly. People don't leave when you scare them. Daniel nodded slowly. But they also don't stay, he said. The truth of it hit her harder than she expected. Her eyes burned. She stood abruptly. This was a mistake. She turned to leave. Daniel spoke softly. You don't have to be kind, he said. Just don't be cruel to yourself. She froze. No one had ever said that to her. She faced him again, eyes glossy with unshed tears. Why aren't you afraid of me? She demanded. Daniel stood. Because this mattered. Because fear is loud, he said. And you're quiet when no one's watching. The words cracked something open. Vivian's breath hitched. For the first time in years, she didn't bark in order. She didn't retreat. She sat back down, and the storm outside raged on. That night, Vivian Cross learned something terrifying. The man who drove her every day saw her more clearly than anyone who ever feared her, and she didn't know whether to push him away or let him stay. The next morning arrived too clean, too bright. Sunlight poured through the floor-to-ceiling windows of Vivian Cross's estate, exposing every sharp line, every polished surface, the kind of morning that suggested order, clarity, and control. Everything Vivian desperately needed. She stood in front of her bathroom mirror, fastening diamond studs into her ears, studying her reflection with practiced detachment. The woman staring back at her looked unshaken. Perfect. No trace of the storm from the night before. No hint of the confession she never planned to make. No sign that her driver had seen her tremble. Ridiculous, she muttered. She straightened her jacket and turned away. Daniel was already waiting by the car. As always, he stood with his hands clasped behind his back, posture relaxed but attentive, gaze drifting toward the horizon rather than the house. When Vivian approached, he opened the door without comment. Good morning, Miss Cross. His tone was neutral, professional. Relief and irritation collided in her chest. Good morning, she replied curtly, sliding into the seat. The door closed. The engine purred to life. Silence. Not the charged silence from the night before. This one was colder. Intentional. Vivian welcomed it. She opened her tablet, scanning emails she didn't absorb, pretending the ache in her chest was nothing more than fatigue. After several minutes, Daniel spoke. Your schedule includes a lunch meeting that was moved to this afternoon. I know, she said without looking up. Another pause. And a call from the board at 10. I know. Daniel nodded, eyes forward. The city passed by in a blur. Vivian felt the space between them widen with every mile. Good, she told herself. This is good. She didn't need closeness. She didn't need insight. She needed efficiency. And yet, at a red light, she caught her reflection in the glass. Not her own, but Daniel's eyes, meeting hers through the mirror. He didn't look away. Neither did she. The light turned green. The moment passed. At the office, Vivian was ruthless. She tore through meetings with surgical precision, dismantled proposals with a single raised eyebrow, and dismissed weak arguments without a second glance. People feared her again. Good. But when she glanced toward the door after each meeting expecting to see Daniel waiting, she felt a sharp, unexpected disappointment. He wasn't there. Of course he wasn't. Drivers didn't attend boardrooms. She clenched her jaw. Daniel spent the morning doing what he always did when he needed distance, observing. He noticed how she walked faster than usual, how her assistants struggled to keep up, how her voice cut sharper than necessary. And he noticed what she didn't. She didn't once look relaxed. When she finally emerged from the building, irritation rolling off her in waves, Daniel opened the door. She didn't thank him. As they pulled away, Vivian spoke abruptly. Last night was inappropriate. Daniel kept his eyes on the road. I didn't think so. She scoffed. You crossed a line. I listened, he said. You assumed. I responded. She leaned forward, anger flaring. I don't pay you to respond emotionally. He exhaled slowly. That's true, he said. But I won't apologize for treating you like a person. Her chest tightened. That's exactly the problem, she snapped. I don't need that. Daniel glanced at her in the mirror. Not challenging, not submissive. Just honest. Everyone needs that, he said. Her voice dropped, dangerous and low. Do not tell me what I need. Silence slammed down. The rest of the drive passed without a word. That evening, Vivian stayed late at the office. Too late. She sat alone in her penthouse office, city lights flickering below, glass of water untouched on her desk. She replayed the conversation over and over, dissecting it like a bad deal. He had no right. He overstepped. He needed reminding of his place. And yet, her mind betrayed her. You don't have to be kind. Just don't be cruel to yourself. Her fingers curled into a fist. Enough, she whispered. The next day, she changed her schedule, assigned another driver for the afternoon. She told herself it was temporary. Professional distance. Necessary correction. Daniel accepted the change without protest. That hurt more than she expected. When she saw him later that week standing quietly near the garage, assisting another executive, he didn't look at her, didn't acknowledge her, didn't notice her. And suddenly, the silence she'd wanted felt unbearable. They didn't speak for 3 days. On the 4th, Vivian broke. She found him in the garage late at night, checking the tire pressure on her car, even though he wasn't assigned to it anymore. Why are you doing that? She asked sharply. Daniel straightened. Old habit. You're not scheduled with me. I know. Then stop. He met her gaze. No. Her breath caught. I don't respond well to defiance, she said. I've noticed. Her anger flared then faltered. Say what you want to say, she demanded. Daniel hesitated. This mattered. You're punishing yourself, he said quietly. And you're using authority to pretend it's discipline. Her eyes burned. That's none of your business. He nodded. Then fire me. The word hit her like a slap. She stopped. Fire him? The thought made her stomach drop. She stared at him, searching for fear. There was none. Only calm. Only truth. Go home, she said finally. Daniel nodded once and walked away. Vivian stood alone in the garage long after he was gone. For the first time in years, she wondered, what if control was the very thing keeping her lonely? They had both chosen distance. But distance didn't erase what had been seen, or what had already begun. And denial, Vivian would soon learn, was far more exhausting than honesty. The call came at 5:42 a.m. Vivian was already awake. She lay staring at the ceiling of her bedroom, the soft glow of the city bleeding through sheer curtains, her mind restless and unforgiving. She hadn't slept properly since the night of the storm. Every attempt at control only sharpened the ache beneath it. Her phone buzzed on the bedside table. She answered without looking. Yes. Ms. Cross, her assistant said, voice tight. The board has scheduled an emergency investor visit. They're arriving in 2 hours. Vivian sat up. Today. They insisted. Fine, she said, already standing. Cancel my morning meetings. Prep the car. A pause. There's an issue. Her assistant continued. Your usual driver is unavailable. Vivian closed her eyes. Of course he was. I'll take the secondary driver, she said coolly. Already reassigned. There's been a scheduling mix-up. Her grip tightened on the phone. Then fix it. Another pause. Longer. The only driver available on short notice, the assistant said carefully, is Daniel Hale. Silence. Vivian's pulse thudded loud in her ears. No, she said. I'm sorry. No, she repeated, firmer. Assign anyone else. There isn't anyone else. Vivian stared out the window, jaw clenched. Control. Order. Discipline. This was none of those. Fine, she said at last. Send him. Daniel arrived precisely on time. As always, Vivian descended the stairs slowly, composed, every step rehearsed. She wore a tailored navy suit, hair pulled back, expression unreadable. Daniel opened the door. Good morning, Miss Cross. She hesitated just a fraction of a second before stepping inside. Good morning, she said stiffly. The car pulled away. The silence this time wasn't cold. It was dense. They drove through the early morning streets, the city barely awake, traffic light, mist hovering above the pavement. You didn't have to agree, Vivian said suddenly. Daniel kept his eyes forward. I'm doing my job. I removed you from my schedule. Yes. And yet you're here. Yes. She folded her arms. Why? He considered the question. Because you called, he said simply. Her breath caught, annoyed at herself for it. This doesn't change anything, she said. I didn't think it would. They fell silent again. The investor visit went longer than expected. Her breath caught, annoyed at herself for it. This doesn't change anything, she said. I didn't think it would. They fell silent again. The investor visit went longer than expected. Much longer. By the time Vivian exited the building, the sky had darkened, clouds gathering like a threat. We're late, she snapped, sliding into the car. Daniel nodded and pulled into traffic. Halfway down the expressway, the car jolted, then slowed, then shuddered to a stop. Daniel frowned. That's not good. Vivian's eyes widened. What do you mean not good? I mean, he said calmly, pulling over, we've lost power. Rain began to fall heavy, immediate. Vivian stared through the windshield in disbelief. This is unacceptable. I agree. She glared at him. Fix it. Daniel stepped out into the rain without another word. Vivian sat rigid in the back seat, watching him through the window as he checked the hood, rain soaking his shirt, hair plastered to his forehead. Minutes passed. Her irritation slowly gave way to unease. He wasn't rushing. He wasn't panicking. He was steady. When he returned, rain dripping from his sleeves, his expression was apologetic. Electrical issue, he said. We're not going anywhere. Vivian's chest tightened. Call another car. I already did, he said. The storm's grounding most drivers. Closest one is over an hour away. She swallowed. An hour. Alone. With him. This is a nightmare, she muttered. Daniel glanced around. There's a service station a short walk ahead. We can wait there. Vivian looked out at the rain, then back at him. You expect me to walk? I expect you to decide, he replied gently. She scoffed, then pushed the door open. Give me your jacket, she said. Daniel blinked, then smiled faintly as he shrugged it off. They walked in silence, rain soaking the pavement, the air thick and cool. Vivian's heel slipped once. Daniel caught her elbow instinctively. For a moment, they stood there close, breathing the same air. Careful, he murmured. The word sent a shiver through her. She pulled away, flustered. I don't need help. I know. That was somehow worse. The service station was nearly empty. A flickering light. The hum of an old refrigerator. The smell of coffee that had been sitting too long. They sat at a small table near the window, rain pounding outside. Vivian wrapped her arms around herself, jacket heavy on her shoulders. You're soaked, she said. Daniel shrugged. It's just water. She really studied him for the first time in daylight. The calm lines of his face. The quiet strength in the way he sat. The absence of fear. Why didn't you leave? She asked suddenly. He met her gaze. Because you didn't ask me to. Her throat tightened. That's not an answer. It is, he said softly. Just not the one you're used to. The rain softened, the storm easing. Vivian stared at the table, fingers tapping restlessly. I don't like this, she said. Being stuck, being seen. Daniel leaned back, giving her space. I see you, he said. And I don't think you're cruel. I think you're tired. Her eyes burned. Don't, she whispered. Why? Because if you're right, she said, voice shaking, then everything I built means nothing. Daniel shook his head. It means you survived. She laughed bitterly. At what cost? The question lingered between them, and neither of them had an answer. Trapped by rain and circumstance, Vivian realized something terrifying. Distance had protected her from pain, but proximity was revealing the truth. And the man she tried to push away was the only one standing close enough to catch her if she fell. The rain eased into a steady drizzle, tapping softly against the service station windows like it was listening. Vivian stared at her reflection in the dark glass, not the billionaire so the world knew, but a woman with tired eyes and a jaw clenched too tight. Daniel said nothing. He had learned that silence, when given freely, invited truth. I wasn't always like this, she said suddenly. Her voice startled even herself. Daniel shifted slightly, attentive but careful not to crowd her. No one ever is, he replied. Vivian exhaled slowly, as if releasing something she'd held for years. My father was admired, she began. Visionary. Charismatic. People followed him everywhere. Daniel nodded. And at home? She smiled faintly. At home, he was everything. Her fingers curled around the edge of the table. Until one day, he just stopped being there. Daniel didn't interrupt. He told me he was leaving on a business trip, she continued. I was 16, old enough to understand lies, young enough to still believe promises. Her voice tightened. He never came back. Daniel felt a quiet ache spread through his chest. No calls, no letters, just lawyers. Vivian laughed softly, bitter. He left the company in ruins. Left me with a legacy everyone expected me to fix, and a lesson I learned too well. Daniel leaned forward slightly. That people leave. That people disappoint, she corrected. That love is temporary. Power is not. Thunder rumbled faintly in the distance, not violent now, just present. I rebuilt everything, she said, piece by piece. Every deal. Every night, I didn't sleep. I made sure no one could ever walk away from me again. Daniel's voice was gentle. By making them afraid. Yes. She didn't deny it. Fear doesn't abandon you, she said. It obeys. Daniel was quiet for a long moment. Then he spoke. My mother believed the same thing, he said. Vivian looked up sharply. She was powerful. No, he said. She was scared. He leaned back, gaze drifting toward the window. She raised 3 kids alone. Worked 2 jobs. Smiled for everyone else. Broke down at night. Vivian watched him carefully. She taught us to be tough, he continued. To expect nothing. To never rely on anyone. He paused. And then she got sick. Vivian's throat tightened. She pushed everyone away, Daniel said quietly. Refused help. Refused love. Said she didn't need it. He swallowed. She died alone in a hospital room not because no one loved her, but because she didn't believe she deserved it. Silence fell heavy between them. Vivian felt something crack open in her chest. That's not the same, she said weakly. It is, Daniel replied softly. Different armor. Same wound. Her hands trembled. She stood abruptly, pacing the small space, heels clicking sharply against the tile. I didn't ask for this, she said. I didn't ask to be abandoned. No, Daniel said. But you learned from it. She stopped. And now, she demanded. Daniel met her gaze. Now you're deciding whether that lesson still gets to run your life. The words landed hard. Vivian pressed her palm against her sternum, as if steadying herself. I don't know how to be anything else, she whispered. Daniel stood slowly, closing the distance just enough to be present, not threatening. Neither did my mother, he said. Until it was too late. Vivian's eyes filled. I don't want to end up alone, she admitted. The confession felt like a collapse. Daniel didn't touch her. But his voice anchored her. Then don't, he said. She laughed through tears. You make it sound easy. It's not, he said. It's terrifying. She wiped her face quickly, embarrassed. Why are you telling me this? She asked. Because, he said, you deserve the truth even if it costs me my job. Her breath hitched. You'd risk that? Yes. Why? Daniel didn't answer immediately. When he did, his voice was steady but raw. Because someone once stayed quiet when it mattered, he said. And I won't do that again. Vivian stared at him. At the man who refused to fear her. Who saw her wounds without flinching. Who offered honesty without demanding power. The rain outside finally stopped. Sunlight broke through the clouds, spilling softly across the floor between them. Vivian felt exposed. And strangely safe. In that small, quiet space. Vivian Cross understood something she had never allowed herself to believe. Her cruelty was not strength. Her control was not safety. And the man standing before her, with nothing but truth and patience, was closer to her heart than anyone had ever been. They didn't leave the service station right away. The storm had passed, but neither of them moved. Vivian sat again, slower this time, the tension in her shoulders easing just enough to notice the quiet. The hum of the lights. The smell of coffee. The simple ordinariness of the moment. I don't remember the last time I sat somewhere like this, she said. Daniel raised an eyebrow. Without marble floors? She huffed a laugh short, surprised. Yes, she admitted. Without an audience. He smiled faintly. It's underrated. She studied him, curious now rather than guarded. You're different today, she said. So are you. She tilted her head. I didn't insult anyone. That's growth, he teased gently. She rolled her eyes, but the corner of her mouth lifted. They shared a quiet smile. Something fragile but real settled between them. When the replacement car finally arrived, Vivian hesitated before standing. I could Cancel the rest of the day, she said, as if testing the words. Daniel didn't hide his surprise. You never do that. I could, she repeated. He nodded. You could. She took a breath. Let's go home. Back at the estate, the house felt different. Less oppressive. Daniel removed his shoes at the door without thinking. When he realized, he froze. Sorry. It's fine, Vivian said quickly. I do it too. He blinked. You do? She shrugged. Sometimes. When no one's watching. They moved into the kitchen, an unspoken ease guiding them. I'll make tea, he said automatically. You cook? She asked. I survive. She watched him move unhurried, comfortable, and felt something twist warmly in her chest. They sat again, closer this time. Why a driver? She asked suddenly. Daniel glanced up. What? You could have done anything. He considered. I like watching people. She frowned. That sounds unsettling. He laughed. I mean learning them. Seeing who they are when they think no one's paying attention. Her gaze softened. And what did you see in me? He met her eyes. A woman who learned to be sharp because she wasn't protected. Her throat tightened. I hate how accurate you are, she muttered. He smiled. You're not hard to read. You're just unused to being read kindly. She let that sink in. Later, they walked through the garden as dusk settled. String lights flickered on automatically, casting a warm glow over stone paths and trimmed hedges. This was my father's favorite place, Vivian said. Before. Daniel nodded. It's peaceful. I ruined it for years, she admitted. Too many memories. And now. She inhaled slowly. Now it feels quieter. They stopped near a bench. Vivian sat, patting the space beside her. Daniel hesitated, then joined her. Their shoulders brushed. Neither moved away. I don't know what this is, Vivian said softly. Neither do I. She looked at him. I'm not good at this. At what? Letting someone stay. Daniel's voice was gentle. You don't have to decide tonight. She exhaled. Good. Because I don't want a night to end. The words surprised them both. Daniel turned toward her slightly. Vivian, he said carefully. If this is just comfort. It's not, she said quickly. I don't let comfort in. Silence stretched. Her fingers twitched on the bench. May I? Daniel asked quietly. She nodded. He took her hand. Not possessive. Not demanding. Just present. Vivian felt tears prick her eyes, not from pain, but from something like relief. I don't feel small with you, she whispered. You're not, he replied. You're just human. She squeezed his hand. I think, she said slowly, that I could love you. Daniel's breath caught. And I think, he said, voice low, that scares you more than anything. She smiled sadly. Yes. They sat there until the lights above them glowed brighter, until the world felt briefly gentle. For one fragile evening, Vivian Cross allowed herself to believe that love didn't have to be earned through fear, that strength could be soft, that happiness was possible. And that was exactly what made the next moment unbearable. The fall came quietly. That was the cruelest part. No warning. No explosion. Just a moment where fear found its voice before love could stop it. The next morning, Vivian woke with a rare lightness in her chest. For once, her first thought wasn't contracts or control. It was the memory of Daniel's hand in hers. The calm of the garden lights. The softness she hadn't known she could feel. She lay there for a moment, staring at the ceiling. This changes things, she thought. And change had always terrified her. By the time she dressed, the walls were back up, not fully, but enough to function. She told herself she needed structure, distance, clarity. She needed to make sure this didn't make her weak. The trouble began with a call. Ms. Cross, her legal advisor said, voice urgent. We have a problem. Vivian sat at her desk, jaw tightening. Speak. There's been an anonymous tip to the board. Claims of impropriety. Specifically, regarding your driver. Her heart stuttered. Impropriety? She repeated flatly. Allegations of favoritism. Emotional involvement. They're requesting an internal review. Silence filled the office. Vivian stared at the city beyond her windows, the world suddenly too bright. Who made the claim? She asked. We don't know. Her mind raced. Someone had seen them. Someone had sensed the shift. Someone was threatening the only thing she had ever protected, her authority. I'll handle it, she said coldly. She ended the call and sat very still. Fear crawled up her spine. Not fear of scandal. Fear of loss. Daniel didn't know any of this. He was in the garage when she approached, phone clenched tightly in her hand, expression unreadable. "Daniel," she said sharply, "come with me." He followed without question. They entered a private meeting room near the executive wing. The door closed. Vivian didn't sit. "This ends," she said. Daniel frowned. "What?" "This," she gestured vaguely between them. "Whatever you think is happening." He searched her face. "Did I do something wrong?" "No," she snapped. "You did exactly what I allowed." The words tasted bitter. "And that was my mistake." Daniel stiffened. "Vivian," he said carefully, "if you're scared." "I am not scared," she cut in. "I am in control." The lie echoed loudly in the room. She turned away from him, pacing. "You forgot your place," she continued. "And I encouraged it." His voice dropped. "Is that what you think this was?" She spun to face him, eyes blazing. "I think," she said cruelly, "that you mistook kindness for entitlement." The words landed like a slap. Daniel recoiled just slightly, but she saw it. "Good," her fear whispered. "Push him away. Protect yourself." "You're my employee," she continued coldly. "Nothing more." Silence fell. Daniel's chest rose and fell slowly. "I asked you once," he said quietly, "why you were afraid to be seen." She said nothing. "And now I know," he continued. "Because when someone does see you, you punish them." Her breath caught, but she refused to let it show. "You're dismissed," she said. "Effective immediately." The words sliced through the air. Daniel stared at her. "Are you firing me?" he asked. "Yes." The room felt suddenly too small. "For doing my job," he pressed. "For forgetting it." Pain flashed across his face, sharp, unmistakable. "I respected you," he said. "I cared about you." She looked at him like he was nothing. "That was your mistake." The lie burned her throat. Daniel nodded slowly. "I hope one day," he said quietly, "you forgive yourself." He turned and walked out. The door closed behind him with a soft, final click. Vivian collapsed into the chair. Her hands shook violently now. She pressed her palms against her eyes, trying to stop the images flooding her mind: the garden, the warmth, the moment she'd almost let herself love. She had chosen control, and it felt like ash. Daniel packed his things in silence. Each step away from the estate felt heavier than the last. He had known this was possible. He just hadn't expected it to hurt this much. As he drove away for the final time, he didn't look back. That night, Vivian stood alone in the garden. The lights flickered on automatically, just like before. But the bench was empty. Her chest ached in a way no loss of power ever had. She whispered into the night, voice breaking. "I didn't mean it." But there was no one left to hear her. Vivian Cross chose pride over vulnerability. And in doing so, she lost the one person who had loved her without fear. This was the cost of control. Power returned quickly. That was the cruel irony. The board accepted Vivian's explanation without resistance. The anonymous complaint was quietly buried. Her authority remained intact, unquestioned, unchallenged. People still feared her. They still obeyed. And none of it mattered. Vivian stood alone in her penthouse office long after midnight, city lights blinking like distant stars beneath her feet. The room smelled faintly of leather and cold coffee. She had won, and she had never felt more hollow. Her phone buzzed. A congratulatory message. A reminder of a meeting. Another request for her approval. She ignored them all. Instead, her gaze drifted to the empty space near the door, the place Daniel used to wait, silent and steady, like an anchor she hadn't known she needed. Her chest tightened. She replayed the moment again, the words she'd used, sharp and deliberate, chosen to wound because wounds kept people away. "That was your mistake." Her reflection in the glass looked unfamiliar now. Older, smaller, alone. Daniel's days became quieter. He took temporary work driving deliveries, the routine mechanical enough to keep his thoughts from spiraling. He avoided the parts of the city that reminded him of Vivian, the estate, the tower, the long curved drive where everything had changed. He told himself it was enough to walk away with his dignity. But at night, when the world slowed, he remembered her voice in the garden. "I think I could love you." The memory hurt worse than the loss, because he believed she meant it. The breaking point came unexpectedly. Vivian was reviewing contracts when her assistant knocked, hesitant. "Yes." Vivian snapped. "There's something you should see." The assistant slid a tablet across the desk. It was a security clip from weeks earlier, the service station, grainy and imperfect. Vivian and Daniel sat at a small table, steam rising from their cups, bodies angled toward each other. They looked human. She looked alive. Vivian's breath caught. "Why are you showing me this?" she demanded. The assistant hesitated. "Because I've never seen you look like that." Vivian stared at the screen. Then the assistant added quietly, "And because you've been miserable ever since he left." The door closed softly behind her. Vivian sat frozen. For the first time, she allowed herself to ask the question she'd been avoiding. What if control isn't strength, but fear wearing a crown? Her hands trembled. She reached for her phone. Stopped. What would she say? "I'm sorry" sounded weak. "I didn't mean it" sounded hollow. The truth was uglier. "I was afraid." Vivian Cross had built an empire on never admitting that. She stood,